Well, I got a number of things going on here. This is all stuff from last week's, not tag sales, the flea market I got these from. We have the 1966 Coleman 228F lantern. We have the Model 520 camp stove with the heater top hat attachment. We have the 1922, apparently never used, Dietz lantern. We have the railroad wrench, railroad marked pipe wrench, and the railroad marked lantern over there. There's a reason why only one of them is here, not the other five. We'll start with the wrench. Cleaned up pretty nice. And it is, you can see, it's New York, New Haven, and Hartford. That's it. New York, New Haven, and Hartford, not Hudson. I don't know why I said that last time. Bemis and Call. It's in surprisingly nice shape. You can see a little bit of buggering, you know, right about this area, by the New York. So it has been used by somebody. But for a railroad wrench, it's in surprisingly good shape. This is going to be one of the later ones. The earlier ones would have had a wooden panel here. So these are probably post-1910, or my guess from the 1920s or 30s. This particular railroad line was pretty big, and they ran for a long time, but they closed up, or they went bankrupt in 1968. I forget who took them over. Somebody did, but they wouldn't have been marking tools after that point like this. And anyway, by 1968, I doubt they would have been using this sort of pipe wrench anymore. But there you go. You know, there wasn't really any major rust on it, just a few little spots here and there. It's this New York, New Haven, and Hartford. But let's see, where is it on here? As you can see, New York, New Haven, and Hartford. These did not come from the same dealer. Just by chance, I found this lantern. And I found this. Now, this particular flea market is in Connecticut. So that's not too surprising. You're going to find railroad stuff from a Connecticut-based railroad, basically. They were all over the New England area, but you'll find them there. And you can see it's got the original glass on it. I haven't done anything to this lantern yet. That one I did. How much did I have to do to my $5 Coleman lantern? Let's see. I put 2 mantles on it. I wiped the dust off it. I pumped it up with a few drops of oil down the pump, and I fired it up. That's it. That is still running on the fuel that is, I don't know how well. I did pour the fuel out into a clear dish so I could see if there was any particles in it. Only a few. I shone a light down in the tank. No rust was visible. So I filtered the fuel, put it back in. It smelled fine. And it's going. I topped it off with a little bit from that red can over there. Now, that red can's got Jamesway stickers on it. There hasn't been a Jamesway around here since, I think it was the late 80s or very early 90s. That can is typical of 1980s. The little Coleman 520, that is the original fuel. I didn't top that one off because it was full. It didn't really need anything. Yeah, except a few drops of oil into the pump, which you add every time you fire one of these up. Popped off right away. No problem at all. Amazing. I paid $10 for the stove and $5 for the lantern. So here now I have a way to cook food and light my way while I'm doing it. You can't beat that. Ordinarily, Coleman lanterns like that go $15 to $25. Although, for my amusement, I looked it up on eBay. There's one guy on there trying to get, I think it's $449 or something like that for one. Good luck with that fella or lady. And these stoves usually anywhere $40 to $70 to $100, depends. Some of them have cases and all that. With the top hat, they're generally a little more expensive. The top hat being the heater. You put that on there, it turns it into a little heater. Okay. Back here. Ouch. Don't knock the lantern over. This is that English knockoff lantern, Dietz knockoff. That is made in England, says it right on it. It doesn't look used ever. It's clean as a whistle. Chalwin Pilot. It's a Chalwin Pilot. I mean, the relationship to the Dietz design is obvious when you look at it next to the real Dietz. It's basically the same lantern. It's a hot blast, same thing, same shape. I mean, not identical, but it's pretty close. Pretty close. So I don't know if they were licensed by Dietz to make this in the UK or they just did it. I don't know. But in any case, I've never seen one before. Not in this country and anywhere else for that matter. So I had to get it. I mean, it was only, what, 20 bucks I think I paid for it, something like that. Brand new. And I imagine it'll work just as well as the Dietz does. There's not a whole lot of ways you can screw up one of those lanterns, you know, the design anyway. This, of course, is the 1922 dated. I don't know if you can really see that on there. It's very difficult to see, but it's 22. It is... hold on a second while I get my eyeball up very close. S-2-22. Yep, 22. Okay. S-2-22. And it had the instruction manual under the glass, you recall from the last video. And I was requested to bring this manual out so you can see it. It's not a manual. It's really just company advertising. It's thick dust on there still. A little bit delicate, so I want to be careful with it. Let's get the pipe wrench. No, we can leave that there. There's no oil on that yet. Let's see if we can get this open without setting it on fire or cracking it. Okay, it opens like so. I'll show you both sides in just a minute. And I guess you could freeze frame it. Actually, I should probably move that wrench so it'll lie flat. There we go. That's better. Okay. Come on. This way you can freeze frame it and look at it later. Tells you how to take care of your lantern, how to light it, all of that, just in case it's not obvious. It shows you the hot blast lanterns. Let's see, I know I have a little star somewhere. I have a high-low for sure. Pretty sure I have a Victor. Monarchs I have several of. Don't know about the Royal or the OK. It's possible. But apparently these lanterns were all in production in at least 1922. And here are the cold blast lanterns. Dietz number 2 Blizzard, the Crescent, the D-Light, the large font D-Light, and the Little Wizard. And here in the end we have the wagon and driving lanterns. I actually have at least one of these. I don't remember which one. Let's turn it over. And we have the Wall Street and platform lanterns. And we have the railroad lanterns. Let's see, which railroad lantern do I have sitting right here? Well, it could be the Vestra. Let's see, which one does it look? Yes, it's the Vestra. Or the Vesta, I'm sorry. The Vesta Cold Blast for Kerosene Railroad Lantern. Right there. And there it is. So that lantern could at least be as old as 1922. I don't know. Imagine there's a date on it somewhere. Dietz used to date code their stuff, I think, until the company started shipping work overseas in the 1950s, mid-50s, I think it was. But somewhere along the way, they stopped putting dates on them. Keep this circular. It is useful. I guess it is. Dietz Blizzard Fits All Lock Knob Globe. Lock knob just means those two little bulges you see coming out of the glass. That kind of locks into those wires on the side to keep the globe in place when you tip it out, to clean it or replace the wick or to light it. And the Dietz Sport Lantern for kerosene. Sport Lantern. I'm not really sure what that refers to. I don't think I've seen one of those. But I will keep my eyes open for one. Didn't know it existed. But then I'm not really a lantern collector. I'm sort of a lantern accumulator up till now. I don't really collect them, but when I see them cheap, I can't resist. All right, everybody got a look at it. You can freeze frame it later. Okay. And the globe, which I'm going to assume is original to this lantern, is the one they just talked about there. The Dietz Blizzard Fits All. And they even show it with exactly the same markings, don't they? No, that one is actually the knock knob marking, which is an earlier marking, but I guess they must have printed this at an earlier time. On this side, oh, there they go. The number 19 lock knob, patented 310 of 1914, Blizzard. And you can see on the inside where it was a little bit more protected in here, this was a tinned lantern. I guess you can see it a little bit here too. Tin plated lanterns are how they used to finish these. Hold on a sec, I gotta put this down first. Hold on. I'll just do this. Trying to get it to go up so you can see the burner. Oh, there we go. There's the burner. I wonder how easily that'll come out. Not very easily. You got to rotate it like this and pull it out. You can see it's in those little slots there. But it's been there, presumably since 1922. So I'm not going to force it. I will gently work on that later. Bottom is so clean. There's a 90 written on there. I don't know if that's 90 cents or... I don't know. I don't know what it means. I wonder if I can get the cap off. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Comes right out. It's brass, that's why. And... can we see shiny in there? Yes. I don't know if the camera can see it, but I can. It is shiny in there. That's never had any fuel left in it. While Coleman fuel seems to be eternal, over time, kerosene, when it's let evaporate, will leave behind a sticky, gluey residue that'll eventually turn black, shellac basically, and coat the inside of your tank. And it's so much fun to get out. How I do it is I fill the tank with evaporust, assuming there's no holes in the tank rusted through somewhere. I don't think there is on this one. I let it sit there for anywhere from a few days to a few weeks, and then I just dump it out, and that dissolves that shellac pretty well. Hey, you can see it still works. Look at that. There is a brand new wick on there. And apparently it came from the factory untrimmed. That is not trimmed. And it still looks brand new. I have no plans to fuel this lantern. I'm going to keep it the way it is, because how many original, untouched lanterns of any manufacturer are you going to find that have been sitting for 102 years without ever being used? And I'm assuming because the paper was still up in the globe, this lantern and the unburnt top of that wick, this lantern was never fueled, it was never used. That's pretty unusual. I don't think I've ever run into one that is all original. I think I said in the last video that it's kind of like it was probably sitting on the shelf of some abandoned general store for 102 years before somebody found it to clean out or Maybe they were doing one of those stupid, let's explore the abandoned building video and steal shit while we're at it. Yeah. You know who you are, people. There we go. Still got some tinning on the cap, too, on the top hat there, or whatever they call that. The burner cap. Look how well these Colemans work. These things have been actually running for like an hour while I was messing around with other stuff. I'm just running them a bit, clean out the regulators a bit. They sell, I'm sorry, the generators. They sell new generator tubes for these things. I've never actually bought one of them for any of mine. I've been running Colemans since the late 1970s, and I've never, ever replaced a generator tube. What I do is I remove them, carefully extract the little pin that goes down the center, and I clean them with carburetor cleaner, which does a really good job. And I put them back in. And usually you get them sooted up when you use gasoline. That tends to do it. Even though some of these are rated for gasoline, the later ones in the 80s are dual fuel. Frankly, I think any Coleman will burn gasoline because they really didn't do too much that I could see to the dual fuel lanterns to make them special for gasoline, but I don't know for sure. But I'm guessing that they figured it was an extra way to make money without really having to change anything. But anyway, that gasoline will soot them up a little bit more, I think. I use Coleman fuel. I mean, if I had to use gas, I would. But I use Coleman fuel in all of my Coleman appliances because I have a lot of it. I pick it up all the time at estate sales, and I'm not afraid to take a can that's half full or quarter full because from experience, I know it's going to be good. I've never yet once come across Coleman fuel that was bad. It always smelled and looked normal. I had a gentleman once give me 2 entire cases of Coleman fuel from 1974, still in the cardboard box. I used that stuff for years. I used to use a stove to melt lead that I would cast into ingots and then sell. And I went through a lot of Coleman fuel. And I was using that stuff up, and I never had any problem with it. 1974. I was 35, 40 years old even then. Now, of course, it's 50 years old, but I'm all out of that. But I routinely pick up white gas or Coleman fuel at estate sales and tag sales and whatnot. Sometimes they're full gallons. And I've never had a problem using any of it. And I was kind of surprised on my $5 lantern there. I was all prepared to take everything apart and oil everything up. I thought for sure that all the valves were stock, everything else. I figured it hadn't been used in probably 40 years. To my surprise, everything turned very nicely. Nothing was stuck. And all I had to do was put mantles on it and clean it. You know, it's dusty, very dusty. I don't know if you remember from the last video, but there was a good cap of dust. And I like these ones with the big top hat on them. Well, it's not the biggest top hat. It's a wide one. I don't know when they stopped doing that. I think in the 70s they went to a smaller cap on there. I kind of like that big cap. It's got white paint underneath, you can see there. It's almost like one of those industrial light fixtures that you see in old factory buildings and stuff. A lot smaller, of course. And it reminds me of the lanterns I used when I was a kid, all of which were from the 1950s and 60s. And I actually still have a couple of those. I might have all of them, actually. I don't know how many of these Coleman lanterns I have, but quite a few. They all work. I'll get them with busted shades on them or whatever, and I'll just replace the glass. And you can still get all the parts of these. You can still get the glass. You can get the pump gaskets and the cap gaskets, everything else. It's all available from the Coleman Company and from other parts sellers. You can go to eBay and find that stuff. Yet I rarely need it. I find the leather bellows in those pumps comes right back with the addition of oil. That's it. You know, any kind of oil, you know, like this type of oil. I get this Outers oil. I get this in, what do you call it, the gun cleaning kits that I buy for $2 and $3 for the whole kit. And there'll be powder solvent in there, usually a full bottle or near it. And often I will find these oil cans never even used. They haven't even been punctured on top. You know, like the kit was never used, which is pretty common. Or it just wasn't used much and they didn't bother to use the oil in it. They used their own. That's full. If you had to buy this, I bet that's $5 or $6. And I get the whole kit for like $2 or $3. I don't pay more than $2 or $3. I just won't. Because I have literally hundreds of them. And you don't want to know how many cans of this stuff I have. Quite a bit. Enough to last my lifetime anyway. And it's very handy for stuff like this. There's a little hole right here. And you drop 5 or 6 drops is all it takes. If it's been sitting a long time, I'll just load it up. I'll put 10 drops in there. I don't care if it mixes the oil a bit, with the gas rather. And that swells the leather back up. Even if you have to walk away and come back in half an hour, it's done. It's just leather. Swells it right back up again, and you're good to go. I've never yet had to replace one. And like I said, I've been running these things since the 70s. I've never had to replace one of those leathers. I imagine if I found a lantern hadn't been used in 100 years, maybe the leather would be too dried out to reconstitute itself, but I haven't run into that, not yet anyway. And I have a lot of these little stoves, at least 4 or 5. Not this particular model. It's the only 520 that I have. But I have the other ones they made a little later. And I have stuff made a lot earlier than this, like back during World War II. Doesn't really, well, it kind of does look like this, but comes in its own. I'll have to do a video on one of these days. It looks like a thermos, basically. And I've had all kinds of Coleman lanterns. Some of them with the nickel plating. Those are the older ones. The tanks are nickel plated. I think it's nickel plated steel. I don't think it's nickel plated brass, but it could be. I even had one from the 20s that had a mica shade on it. Not glass, but as before Pyrex. So it was like mica panels. I actually sold that one to a real Coleman collector, of which I am not. I use these things. You know, if I have to work out here late or I'm doing something or I just need light, like not too long ago I had to unload a car after dark. I lit one of these and lit the whole area up. And they're very handy. And I get the fuel at the estate sales for like 50 cents for the whole can. So I'm not complaining, you know. It doesn't cost me much to run them. Kerosene lanterns either. They're picturesque. They look nice lying around on the wall, as shelves and whatnot. And I do use them occasionally too. And if you have a power outage, it's also very good to have. I suspect that's why a lot of people buy these things. And then they move, excuse me, or they, sell out. Whatever happens, they end up selling them cheap. I never pay more than 20 bucks for a Coleman lantern. In my life, I've never paid more than that. Well, there you go.